Today we're going to talk about Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, and it is definitely the lottery that no one wants to win. Okay, there's some basic symbolism in the lottery, and the idea of ritual sacrifice, I believe, is very clear. Ritual sacrifice is something that we have seen, across religions and through humanity for a very long period of time. There's a belief, Carl Jung believes that part of the early human understanding of the idea of death and rebirth was conceptualized through the seed. You would plant the seed, which was represented as death. The seed is not a living thing, but contains life. The seed would be covered and then would sprout new life. From this early understanding that our early ancestors, humans, replaced this idea or conceptualized this idea of the seed being buried with this idea of a societal or a tribal cleansing. So if there was a part of society, say a certain attribute, or a part of society of which society as a whole wished to distance themselves from, that they would place these attributes symbolically in a person, in an animal, in an object, and destroy the object. And then through this destruction of the object, that there would be a societal cleansing. And through this cleansing would be this idea of a rebirth or a invigoration of society. So I think the metaphor there is quite clear and quite straightforward, and I've read a lot of your comments that really, I think, basically elaborate on that exact topic. So let's talk a little bit about how Shirley Jackson goes about creating this, right? What Shirley Jackson does is she gives us a town who is still perpetuating this ritual in which they may or may not completely understand how it got started. And I think that the story really points to the fact that they do not understand how the ritual actually got started. They have a vague notion of it producing better crops, but they don't truly understand the tradition as it was created. And how do we see this? We see the box that was originally used allowed to fall in disrepair. That's splintered, it's worn and stained, and I think the stains, probably come from blood. But it's allowed to fall from this new, shiny box into disrepair. The wood chips that were once used in the original ritual have been replaced, so that part of the ritual has kind of just fallen away, the wood chips, and been replaced because the town has gotten larger, and for convenience sake that they've changed the ritual around somewhat. The people in the crowd have hinted that other towns are thinking, there's talking in other towns about thinking about not even doing the lottery anymore, and so there's this kind of understanding that maybe the ritual itself in other towns is simply thinking about being discarded altogether. In that case, the ritual is completely falling apart. But they do say, she does go ahead to say that they do remember to use stones. And so that's, I think, Shirley Jackson's way of pointing to the fact that this tradition has become basically a mystery, right? Mr. Summers doesn't even remember anymore how to greet the people from the stage. That all he does is give them a simple acknowledgement as they walk up to the stage. That everything has kind of faded or disappeared from the original intent of the lottery, and has basically been kind of replaced with this idea of we remember one part of the ritual, and that part of the ritual is using stones or stoning to death. And so I believe that's what Shirley Jackson's doing. She's kind of really emphasizing this idea of rituals as something that are constantly being replaced, and through the replacement being changed, and through this change the original intent being lost. and then examining why people go through with these rituals, even though they've changed them to and maybe have lost the original meaning, that the characters in the story still follow these rituals. And I think that it's very obvious the correlation between what she's talking about in society. Do we have rituals that we still use that we don't quite understand? And it's quite easy to think about these in real life. You know, the ideas of chivalry. Do we understand why we're still doing, you know, these kind of things, and so on and so forth. I think it's very easy for us all to see this idea of ritualistic practice in everyday life that we don't understand why we do. Okay, so I think the true terror comes in the story from this idea of, yes, that we do have rituals, that we do follow, that's obvious, but the animalistic nature of the story makes this ritual progress into something monstrous. And Shirley Jackson's really pointing toward this idea that these simple rituals that we carry with us every day, that we do practice every day, and we don't really think about them anymore, are these rituals something which, if left unquestioned, can grow into something much more horrific, right? And so in the story we see them keeping the part of the lottery that is the most horrific or the most inhumane. And what do I mean by that? We still execute people today. We execute people by, I think hanging is still done in one state, I believe that's right, or in an option, and obviously by the electric chair. That's here in Alabama, we do that. And I want to say that too, that gunfire or firing squad is also used in a state for a method of death as well. But we still practice execution. So that part of it is still with us. So the horrific part, I believe, in my opinion, comes from the idea of remembering the stones. That they could have updated this idea of killing the person with a more humane method, but they have resisted that. Why they have changed from wood chips to paper, and they've changed from the greetings. they've changed a lot of stuff, but there's one thing that they're going to keep, and that one thing is they're going to make sure that they stone someone to death. You know, just the most horrific method that you can think of. They're going to make sure they keep that part. And so let's just think about the brutality of that for a minute, because it's really easy for us to read the story and to forget about, that the story is actually referencing this horrific deed, instead of just the death of a person, which is horrific in itself, but the death of a person in the most gruesome method. And it even says that at one point, of course, the children are throwing rocks. They're letting children stone these people to death. And they, even in the past, they've stoned children. They've stoned children to death. Rocks were being used everywhere, from small pebbles that glances off her head at the end of the story, to rocks so big that people have to lift it with both hands to pick this rock up, to stone someone. Just imagine that for a minute, lifting a rock so large that you need both hands and to crush someone with it. And so I believe that's the part of the story that Shirley Jackson is really emphasizing, that kind of inhumanity, or I'm not sure if there is a word for that kind of societal action. But okay, so that's the symbolism or that kind of ritualistic, blind ritualistic obedience. I think that is a real clear example in the story, and I think everybody understands. And then so I'll be back in just a few more minutes, or in the next video, to discuss just a little bit more about the lottery.